precast concrete tank, probably 40 by 40, 2 trains on there, but there will be grading on top of that. And that's where all the treatment, contains that one thing. But there is no storage lagoons like you would see if you drove north on Route 100, where you would see that in Upper Euclid Township. That's what most people are familiar with. They did treatment in the lagoon, and they also did storage in the lagoon. In this case, we're doing it all in a precast concrete tank, and then the actual 3 days of storage, I'm recommending and would design it that it would be covered storage. The reason that I would do covered storage is I don't want to have sunlight get in, which would cause algae to form, which would cause me to do additional filtration, so I wouldn't clog my drip emitters. So once I got it clean, I want to keep it, underground in a storage tank, covered so no air gets into it, and I want to maintain that water level as low as possible at all times. The goal is to get it in, treat it as fast as you can, and dispose it as fast as you can, in accordance with the application rates. And that's just the #1 rule in wastewater. And that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jennifer or Jeff Kramer, are you present?
I am present. No questions.
Ms. Bruns, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Scroce, are you present?
Here, no questions.
Eileen Carey, are you present? Jim McDermott, are you present? Dennis or Patricia McFadden, any questions?
I have a question. Confused about whether the drain fields can be utilized by, say, youth. I thought I heard you say there might be a fence go around it because it can't be compacted, but then you said, I thought that kids could play soccer on it, but then I heard that the grass has to stay 8 to 12 inches high, so it seems like there's some, I don't know, maybe I'm confused.
No. And I'll clarify. Passive recreation is allowed. We discourage it because we don't want any compaction and go down through there. So we would not want any planned active recreation on there. What the point I was trying to make is that you can't control kids. I have 2 boys. If they were to go out and play on it, they're not going to have an impact. If we had an organized soccer league coming on there, it would cause me more concern. All the literature, it's done elsewhere. I like to protect wastewater fields as much as I can so that it just serves that sole purpose of disposing of treated effluent. So that's why we discourage it. But what I want everyone to know is that, oh my gosh, kids ran across it. Did they just do damage? No, they didn't do damage to that.
I don't understand you discouraging it, though. I had a neighborhood volleyball game on my yard for 20 years, and there were a lot of people, and it was very organized, but I'm sure my neighbors weren't encouraging it either. Things happen, and organization becomes the norm. So, you discourage it. Who's maintaining this discouragement if it's not supposed to be compacted? Who's paying attention to that?
The operator does. The operator does that through the actions and the maintenance of the field. You can't stop it by allowing the grass to be 8 to 12 inches high. Discourages people from playing volleyball, but who don't play volleyball on 8 to 12 inches high grass. And it would be owned and maintained by the township, so a private resident can't go out and cut it. That's why we put the fence around so someone doesn't drive their lawnmower out there. Will it cause a problem? No. We have sand mounds in the vast majority of people's backyards. We've played on them forever. It has not caused an issue. But when you have this many people on a specific purpose, in the engineering world, we try to maximize the disposal fields for the sole purpose of disposal of effluent there.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Ms. Weller, any questions?
No questions.
Linda or Matt Riker, are you present? Okay, does the board have any questions?
For this development, you said that the costs would be spread over a larger user base. Can you explain how, for a new development, your costs would be shared by other existing customers or residents?
That was in the question, the reference to that question was if we were to connect to the public sanitary sewer system and not build this community system. If we were to connect to the public sanitary sewer system, we would become an existing customer of the authority, and we would be joining a larger user base that was solely in reference to connection to public sewer.
And are you familiar that we do not have an authority?
Then it would be the township which goes to the authority, so I misspoke.
And so what I hear you saying, is this correct? You're saying that your costs would be subsidized by other residents if we went to public sewer? That's your
No.
expectation?
No, that's not. My statement was that the sewer user rates, the residents, the future property owners of this development would enjoy a lower sewer rental rate if they were connected to public sewer. The installation of the collection, conveyance, and the purchase of capacity in public sewer were the selected option will be borne solely by the developer. So he would install the entire collection system, all necessary water or all necessary wastewater infrastructure to convey it to the existing public sewer system. He would then purchase capacity, which would include two parts of capacity. One part of the tapping fee, through the purchase of tapping fees. The tapping fee is comprised of 2 units. One unit is for the treatment portion, which is where he purchases his share of the existing treatment plant. The other portion is for the conveyance, where he pays back the township and/or authority who installed the existing infrastructure, which he would utilize from his connection point to convey the raw wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant.
The second question I have is in respect to a comment you made about groundwater. You said that in the drip irrigation that you cannot raise the groundwater to the ground table, or you could not raise groundwater table more than something. And I'm not sure, are you familiar with what the groundwater level is at this time? The geotechnical specialist at our last meeting referenced groundwater at 4.4 feet in that disposal area.
And how that is...
How much is that groundwater going to increase by a system put on it? And explain how you're not going to be able to elevate that groundwater by this system disposing in that area.
Okay. As part of the sewage facilities planning requirements, we're required to do a mounding analysis. And the purpose of the mounding analysis, the first step in the mounding analysis is to drill monitoring wells in the proposed disposal areas to monitor the groundwater table. They then use the pit and well program and a series of pumping tests to determine the transmissivity between the monitoring wells, how they'll be distributed. Based upon that, they will establish the seasonal high groundwater table based on a 10-year, the highest calculated groundwater table in 10 years as a starting point. They then add the impact of the treated effluent disposed in that area. That's known as the mound. That is taken the 10-year seasonal high water table. The mound is then calculated on top of that. The requirements by the DEP are that there has to maintain 4 feet from the top of that mound at the highest point of any disposal field to the groundwater surface. If that is not maintained, the area with a high groundwater table would be removed, or the application rate would be reduced in that area to maintain that 4-foot elevation from the 10-year seasonal high groundwater table plus the application of our treated effluent to the soil.
So from what you've just said, it sounds like this disposal area would have to be elevated from its current level significantly if groundwater is at 4 feet now. As
That area
testified.
would most likely
Or not
be...
you, but a prior.
That area would most likely be excluded from that, And that's why they tested in excess areas of what is required. As you go
Would be
through-
excluded from what?
would not be approved as part of the planning module. So what they would do is you would test areas as our application did here, where we tested, and if we used every area at the lowest application rate, we would have 89,000. I only need 80,750. If half of the areas were deep well drain soils, an application rate is 6,000 gallons per acre, and half of them were at 3,000, I would probably have an excess of approximately 5 acres that would not be required. So areas that are marginal, have a seasonal high groundwater table, would be excluded from that. But DEP's hydrogeologist will guarantee that. And we will do detailed, a licensed soil scientist will do detailed test pits that are witnessed by DEP. And then the mounding analysis, which must be performed by a professional hydrogeologist, is then reviewed by DEP's professional hydrogeologist to ensure that both of those things occur. It's not uncommon for us to lose disposal capacity, and that's why we start out testing 25.5 acres, knowing that we really only need, I'm not sure the exact number, 20 acres, 18 acres, because you will lose some during the approval process.
Have you figured out what that acreage is that you need for this EDU expectation for these 323 homes?
I have the detailed soil, the DEP witness soil testing has not been completed, nor has the final mounding analysis been done. The previous expert did perform a mounding analysis, which concluded that there was areas, but that's out of my area of expertise as to where it is. I looked at it on the worst case scenario, assuming that we use the 25.5, we use the lowest loading rate of 3,500 moderately well drained, did not take credit for any deep well drained soils that are present on the site that would have a loading rate of 6,000 gallons. And that's what I base my opinion on.
And given that I guess my question is, because you're discouraging recreation from those drip irrigation areas, did you use this area as part of your calculation for your open space and your required recreation acreage?
That's out of my field of expertise.
I guess I would have that for another person testifying on your behalf. One question. Are you familiar with the drug take-back program?
I think that's out of my area of expertise.
Okay, you commented on pharmaceuticals and how they could all be decomposed biologically through a drip irrigation system. You testified on that.
What I testified to.
We have a program in Westtown and throughout the county that we specifically tell people to bring their drugs to us because
Absolutely.
they do not.
Never want anyone to flush a pharmaceutical or anything other than wastewater down the toilet. So.
And isn't that true for a drip irrigation system as well?
Absolutely. Any
And
mechanical
why is
system.
that so?
You never want to, you do not want to flush them down. The question was asked is, what happens if a pharmaceutical is flushed down? Accidents happen. People drop pills in toilets. In every municipally owned and operated wastewater treatment plant, and any drip thing, everything is handled in the biological treatment plant. Is it desirable? Absolutely not. Is it discouraged by any means possible through education, through great programs like you just described? Absolutely. But does it happen? Yes. Has it caused failures in every municipal treatment plant? No.
My question is not the treatment process, but the application onto the soils, having that our groundwater and our aquifers are so high to the actual ground where you're disposing. Do you think that those pharmaceuticals
I think it's
would have
significantly better if it were to occur in this system compared to an individual on-lot system that does not have a biological
What does
treatment
better
process.
mean?
will have a significant opportunity to biologically degrade that pharmaceutical compared to an on-lot treatment system, such as an individual sand mound, which does not have a biological treatment component, simply has a septic tank, and then it goes into the groundwater through that. So this is a significantly better scenario for that. A larger municipal system is significantly better. The more biomass that you have that can consume that, the better off you are. The goal is for you to educate your residents so that they do not dispose of any pharmaceuticals through the wastewater system. And it sounds like you have a very good program in place of that would benefit the wastewater treatment plant.
That's all I have.
Sure, so I just had a couple questions. So you were talking about the public sewer, and if it was to be connected to public sewer, that the, conveyance and collection system would be putting it in would be on the builder.
That is normally how it's done, and that's what my expectation would be here, that they would bear 100% of that cost, but the builder would have to verify that.
Sure, and I just want to just clarify, you had just said that, but any upgrades to any existing structures that would be needed to take on that collection could also be associated to the builder too, correct?
Yes, that could be discussed and included in the land development agreement or the tap or the sewer connection agreement. That would absolutely be there. It would be identified during the sewage planning process.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure you had talked about the building of the system, but you hadn't talked about any upgrades to any of the existing systems that were currently in place. So I know that the plan would be to either offer for dedication to, if you were to go back to the drip irrigation system, to offer dedication to either the township, another authority, or a third-party public utility company. And I know that there's quarterly testing and annual testing, but as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar, the DEP is constantly changing their regulations on stormwater management, on wastewater management, and so it's not like if today 10 of the nitrogen is the level that you're looking at, 5, 10, 15 years from now, that those baselines that you have to adhere to could be changing. I guess my question is, what capacity does this development have for stricter regulations by DEP that would require additional processing of that wastewater treatment, or to lower reductions in phosphorus or nitrogen or what have you? So I know that as today, the system and the area, the acreage is comparable for what is today's regulations, but what about in the future?
They would mostly be handled, the standards were established in the Water Quality Management Permit, which establishes those standards for a period of 5 years. Every 5 years was the opportunity for reevaluation and more stringent standards. All the standards would impact the level of treatment. It would not increase the amount of effluent that needed to be disposed. So that's why we're relying solely on the mechanical treatment plant for all treatment and not the soils. Because if you rely on the soils, you may have to have more area, which we won't have the opportunity once it's fully developed. So what would end up happening is the level of treatment would have to be increased such to meet whatever regulatory standards. Obviously, regulatory standards are established based on best available technology, so there has to be a level of technology. What would happen, this is the reason that DEP wants to have either municipal ownership or a third-party PUC, because the residents could come up with $1 million upgrade. Wouldn't have $1 million. So either the authority, township, or third-party PUC could take out a loan on their behalf, guaranteed by their sewer rates, and be able to do the required upgrade to meet the effluent requirements. And the result of them taking a loan would be that the sewer rental rates of all the residents connected to that would have to be increased to cover not only the operational costs, but that additional debt service.
Sure, and I guess I should have clarified my question more. So I'm actually talking about the treatment facility.
Yeah.
the footprint that you're going to design with the different tanks and the clarifiers and the like, you know, let's say 5, 10 years from now, you need to add additional clarifiers or other systems to treat that effluent to get it to the new standards. Will the footprint of where you're planning the wastewater treatment plant be sufficient enough for expansion?
There's always excess area and there's areas for additional treatment. I can't answer that question. I don't have a crystal ball. If I knew what level to expect, I would design it in today. That's why we're over-designing it slightly today. We're using the same treatment technologies that the treatment technologies that I described here are very similar to the vast majority of the treatment technologies that every municipality, public sewer system uses. So we will be subject to the same improvements that they have. I don't know, just as I don't know what the new standard would be, I don't know what the available technology at that time would be to treat it, to know how big of a footprint it has. So we do include extra area for the future because we don't know. But is it adequate? I don't know.
Sure. So let me just ask just another question. I'm sorry to hammer on this point. Let's just say, as it's built today, the design that you've looked at, the treatment plant takes 2 acres. How much of that acreage are you going to dedicate for future expansion?
It's a buffering around it, depending on the configuration, which will depend on the style of treatment plant. Usually what I do is I allow the room for an additional treatment train. Is a rule of thumb that I use. I provide whatever the treatment train length is. So if it's 40 feet, I provide an additional 40 feet. We also have an additional buffer of 250 feet that could be utilized as well. And we try to locate it where we have additional area, be it closer to a stream corridor or thing like that. But the rule of thumb is that if I have 2 treatment trains, I reserve the area for a 3rd treatment train, is how I do it, and it's just my